Jambo everyone, karibu sana, hello and welcome to Kenyan Cook Along. I'm Josh Osoro Pickering from Nottingham Castle Trust, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Kenyan food and cooking some of Kenya's favourite dishes. I'm really pleased to be welcoming you into our house as part of Not Stopping Festival. Behind the camera is the lovely Emma Lomas-Clark.
Hello.
So she'll be chatting to me a little bit and filming the whole process. Yeah, Kenyan food for me is really special. I grew up with it. My mum and dad cooked it when I was a little kid, and mainly my granny was the biggest influence in terms of Kenyan food. Whenever she visited or we visited her, she'd cook up a big feast for us all, for me and my sister. And yeah, we really enjoyed eating it. It's something I do now with my kids, and yeah, it's a tradition. We wanna keep it going, even though we're far away from Kenya. But it is evocative, and it takes us back to Kenya, takes us back to our childhood, me and my sister. And yeah, it's probably the cuisine that's closest to my heart. But it is quite unknown and underrated, I feel. So I wanted to share a little bit of it with you, and yeah, hope you enjoy. The first thing I normally do when I cook Kenyan food is get into the mood and put on some Kenyan music. So that's what I'm going to do. The second thing I'd probably normally do is have a Tusker beer, as shown by this t-shirt, the national beer of Kenya. But I haven't got any today, so I'm just going to have a Dragon Stout.
Is that a traditional Kenyan beer, Josh?
Not at all, but I like it. Other strong stouts are available. So we've got the music, we've got a drink. Have a little look at some of these ingredients. We've got lime, really widely used in Kenyan cuisine, chilli, of course, and then we've got some interesting spices that are very common on the coast in Kenya, and one of the dishes I'm going to be cooking today is a Swahili style bean stew, coconut and bean stew. And so what we've got here is a cinnamon stick. This is nutmeg in its original little pod that it comes in. Don't often see it in that form, but it's yeah, it's really pretty. And something you're probably a bit more familiar with, cardamom. So all three of these are really commonly found in Swahili cuisine in particular, and found out on the coast, the East African coast. The Swahili people are amazing. They've got this great long tradition of thousands of years of trading up and down the Indian Ocean coast of Africa, from the Arabian Peninsula all the way down through Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Madagascar, and all of the little islands around there. And through those thousands of years of trading and interacting with other cultures, they brought lots of different influences. And that's the great thing about Kenyan food, is it's got so many different influences from all of the people that have come into that region, various colonizing forces, but also people trading and people migrating to work in Kenya. So we're going to see a little bit of some of that today, and we'll talk about all the rest of it as well. One thing I should say, probably the most famous Kenyan food, for Kenyans at least, and the favourite, is nyama choma. We're not cooking that today. Sorry to disappoint any Kenyans watching, and I'll probably get some stick from it for it from friends. But we're going vegan today. So all of the ingredients we've got here are meat and dairy free, and we're going to be doing, as I said, that stew, that coconut and bean stew that's so common on the coast, that I've had a couple of times out there, and it stayed with me, and every time I make it, or try to make it and try and do it justice, it takes me right back to the coast, to that beautiful beach scene with a nice drink in hand, and yeah, just amazing weather and palm trees. I'm also going to try and show you how to make some other classics of Kenyan cuisine. We've got, if you come over and have a look at this, we've got these greens here. These are spring cabbage, spring greens. In Kenya, you'd probably use something a bit closer to collard greens that they use in America in the south, and we call that sukuma wiki. So I'm going to make sukuma wiki. You can use kale as well, that's really similar, but we're going to be using spring cabbage today, which is all I could get, unfortunately, at the time. Kenyans grow a lot. Agriculture is the biggest thing in Kenya, the biggest industry. So these are actually fresh out the ground a couple of days ago. These are onions that we're going to be using. Admittedly, they're not from the rich, fertile soils of Western Kenyan highlands, but they're from New Baseford, which is a close second. And then we've got a bunch of other spices, which I'll talk to you more about as we go into it and as we use them. I think we should just get cracking. I'm going to show you this this stew to begin with. I've got a big pan for this. I'm going to do quite a bit. I'm cooking for 4 here. Two little people with big appetites and two adults. So the first thing that I'm going to do is fry off some onions. I've got some that I fried earlier, but I think I'm just going to do a couple more so that we've got enough. And you can use red or white onions for this, it doesn't really matter. I've got a mix of the two here.
It's a shame I broke your favourite knife a couple of days before this.
My favourite ceramic knife is no more, but it's alright, don't worry. So as I was saying, agriculture is the biggest industry in Kenya. Kenya's very known for its tourism, which is a bit more of a kind of all singing, all dancing kind of affair, and everybody knows about safari and about the coast that Kenya has. Places like Kilimanjaro just over the border and Mount Kenya. But it's a little bit less known perhaps publicly for its agriculture. It actually produces a lot of crops that we would find in British supermarkets, a lot of our coffee and tea. Kenco is Kenya company. And a lot of the tea as well, yeah. But we have a lot of products that we don't really, we wouldn't really suspect came from Kenya. Stuff like beans and mange too, because of the climate there and the rich soil. It's become a huge industry, and ever since the British were in Kenya, it's been used for agriculture. Flowers is another one of the biggest ones. I believe that Kenya might be the biggest producer of flowers in the world. More so than even Holland, I think. But agriculture runs deep in the culture as well. It's not just an industrial thing. Everybody does it. A lot of Kenyans have a piece of land, even a small piece of land, a plot back home in the village where they come from. While they're living in the city in Nairobi or Mombasa, they might go home and they've got a little plot, or they tend some kind of land. Agriculture is really a big part of it. So yeah, growing your own vegetables, growing your own produce and cooking with it is something that's instilled from an early age in Kenya. I've got my onions now, so I'm actually just going to get a bit of oil. You can use any kind of oil for this really. Go, drop that in, and we're going to put it on a fairly high heat. And I'm going to put my onions in. Put these ones in as well. And these are going to just cook off for a while. They need to be about translucent before we put the next thing in. So I'm just going to leave them for a little bit. And I'm going to start chopping some garlic. I'm going to start with a couple of cloves and I'll taste it as I go through it and just see if I need that extra third one. But for now, yeah, I'm just going to do 2. Let's give this another little stir. And as we're going along with this, you can pause at any time and check out the recipe, check out the method. If you just want extra clarification, we're going to be putting all of the ingredients and the recipes on the comment sections of the video. You'll be able to see that everywhere that we post it. before I put that in, I'm going to just put in some of the spices that we're going to use for this. I mentioned already that the cinnamon and nutmeg and cardamoms are in particular the flavours that you find on the Kenyan coast. The Swahili people in their trading set up huge trade ports, so they had Mombasa was a key port for them and was contested by all the colonial powers that then moved into the area and tried to get it for strategic reasons and for trading reasons. Zanzibar Island, which many of you all know, is also a key centre for the Swahili people. And yeah, that's in all of the markets that you have there, you'll find these in their original forms, in the sticks, in the little pods that the nutmeg comes in. I'm going to cheat, obviously, with some of it because you don't want to see me grinding up these things. So I'm going to use powdered nutmeg, a little dash of that, not too much. The cinnamon's going to go in a little bit later when it's a bit more liquidy. Well, towards the time when we make it a bit more liquidy. And I'm also going to put in some turmeric. Now, turmeric and curry flavours are quite prevalent in Kenyan cuisine and East African cuisine in general. That's because there's a big Indian influence in the food that's found in East Africa. Indian people first came to Kenya to work. They came, well, not long after the British established a presence in the area, and the original big surge of Indian people moving to East Africa was with the building of the Uganda Railway, which was from Mombasa, built by the British from Mombasa all the way to Uganda, to the interior of East Africa really, to help with their trade. And they brought over thousands of Indians who worked as indentured labourers, basically in terrible conditions, and thousands of them died in the construction of the Uganda Railway. You might have heard of the famous Lions of Savo, who basically just picked off workers. They got a taste for humans and they were eating people. So I think that was a film with, I want to say, Val Kilmer. Check that one. So I'll put some turmeric in there. One of the spices that was brought over and one of the influences that came with those Indian workers. A lot more came over in the early 20th century in different waves, especially in the 20s and 30s. And now in Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda, less so in Uganda, but in Kenya and Tanzania there's a big Indian community. In Uganda there was a move in 1972 from Idi Amin to expel Asians from that country, which received a lot of press here, and especially so because Britain took in a lot of the Ugandan Asians. Leicester has one of the biggest communities, and a lot went to Canada as well. So I put in the turmeric there. I'm now going to add some red pepper to fry that off as well. Those onions are nicely translucent and they've got a bit of the spice in them as well. And I'm going to put in that garlic. And this needs about 5 minutes probably on here. It just needs to fry through a little bit, but the liquid is going to cook it a lot more. We just want to get the process going and get a bit of a mix with the spices into that pepper and garlic. If you find it getting dry, you can add a little bit of oil. If you've got a nice non-stick pan, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. This one works okay, but yeah, don't be scared to put a little bit more oil in. All of this music, by the way, you can find on my Spotify if you're interested. Josh Osoro Pickering on Spotify, and I've got a Kenyan playlist. I've also got an African funk playlist that I play all the time, but it's more appropriate to play the Kenyan one today. Let's let that stir a little bit. I'm going to clear this. And I'm gonna talk to you about another one of the dishes as that's cooking. This is Kachumbari. Kachumbari is a salad that is made typically from onions and tomatoes, raw onions and tomatoes. Different things can be added to it, and there are variations all over East and Southern Africa. I like to do it with a bit of cucumber as well to just give it a bit of a fresher, another fresher flavour. So I've chopped up already, you can probably see I've chopped up some onions, cucumber, and I've used cherry tomatoes because I like the sweetness of those. Really with this, the smaller you can chop it, the better, I find. And each country does it differently. And one of the beautiful things about Kenyan cuisine is the acceptance of different influences and taking in things from all over the place. So I've exercised a little bit of artistic license with this. I've stuck obviously with those raw fresh ingredients, but I'm going to add a few little things of it for it myself. I'm just going to get a bowl for that, and I'll show you how I mix it all together. So a bowl about that size should be enough for me. You'll see how much it is a bit better when I've poured it all into here. There we go. And the things I'm going to add to this are lime juice. Kind of like a dressing really, how I'm doing this. I'm squeezing in about half a lime. But depending on how much you like lime, do the whole one, do less. Obviously, it's, as I've said, it's all about your own tastes here and about that tolerance of different styles and different influences, so do whatever you feel really with that. The other thing I'm going to be doing is adding chili. Chili's such an important ingredient in Kenyan cuisine, as it is in many cuisines. It's also very important for me with this dish because this is kind of the dish that got me eating spicy food as a kid. My granny used to make this, and she used to put it out on the table, and there would sometimes be one that was a bit more tolerable for the kids, but there was always that kind of challenge to step up and have a bit of the hot stuff. So my granny, in her accent, her unique accent that's kind of mixed between Western Kenyan and Grimsby, would say would say, Joshua, ioti stuff, hot stuff was what she called this. Kachumbari is the name in Kenya. It's not always spicy in Kenya when I've had it, but it certainly was when my granny made it. And if it wasn't for that, I'd probably still be eating kormas to this day. As it goes, I like hot curries as well now.
So are you going to do a child-friendly version of this one?
What, for our kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do a little bowl of it, but I'd be going against tradition if I didn't challenge them to have a little taste of this as well.
Okay.
So I'm chopping up the chili really fine. I'm going to have to try not to touch my face. I mean, we'll be getting some practice at that anyway lately, but yeah, you don't want to see me crying on camera. So, just going to try it actually. You never know with these things whether they're going to be really hot or not. So that's reasonably hot. Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of it aside for the girls, and the rest of it is going to be mixed in with this chili. What I like to do with the kachumbari is to get a bit of liquid going with it. What I'll do at the end is just give it a mash, which kind of releases some of the tomato juice and some of the cucumber and gives it a bit of a fresher kind of mix, and it blends with the lime juice, and so you do get a bit of a drip on it when you serve it on the plate, which I quite like. It also helps with the mix for the chili, so the liquid obviously helps to spread it around as you stir it and mash it, making it even hotter. So that's the majority of that chili there that's gone in. I'm now... Oh, I didn't take any out for the girls. Oh well, we're gonna have to grow up quick. So I'm just gonna wash my hands, just chill out and listen to those tunes for a second. The other thing I like to put in the kachumbari, which you probably wouldn't find much in Kenya, but I really like the taste of, is a bit of paprika, a bit of smoked paprika, works really well. So about that much, it's probably about half a teaspoon. Just going to sprinkle that in as well. And a little pinch of salt. There we go. And with that, have we got a masher? Yeah. With that, I like to just give it a little press. Nothing too strenuous, just a little push to release those juices. And then if you just give it a little turn with a spoon, stir it in, make sure that juice gets all around it and all over it. And that's basically it. So I'm just going to cover that back up again, and that'll be ready to go when we eat at the end. So that one's done. Kachumbari, the recipe will be there in the comment section. And back to the coconut bean stew. The next thing I'm going to do is put in those beans. So I'm using kidney beans. You can use black-eyed peas or other types of beans. I just really like the mix of kidney beans and coconut. So these are going in. I'm going to throw in this one. So in goes the second can. I'm making quite a bit. Remember, I'm making it for 4. Just turn the heat up again a little bit. Can you see in there? Yeah, giving it a nice stir. And the next thing that's going to go in there to complete this, it's quite a simple dish. I mean, again, you can get as kind of arty and creative with it as you want, but I'm keeping it quite simple today. Coconut, tinned coconut milk is going in as well. I'm putting the whole thing in. So when that gets in there and starts mixing in, you'll see that the turmeric, obviously, that's in there already, give that a nice orange kind of colour. Go. And that is pretty much that for the coconut bean stew. That's just going to cook now. So I'm going to put a lid on that.
Are you going to put any other spices in it?
I'm not putting anything else in. Oh, sorry, yeah, there was the cinnamon stick that we didn't have before. That's going to go in there as well. And the cardamom that we talked about. Find them. Yeah, there they are. Cardamom are going in. You can put in a stock cube. It's optional. Give it a taste as you're going, maybe. I often put in a Maggi cube. So, yeah, I'm just going to do that as well. If I can open it. There we go. And I'll season that to taste with salt and pepper as we go as well. Just going to let it cook like this for a little bit first. The stock cube obviously has a bit of salt in it already, so we're just going to let that cook and then see how it tastes in a little while. Like with many stews and soups, the longer you cook it, the more days you leave it and come back to it, the better it gets. This isn't any different, so I'm probably going to do it fairly quickly so that we can show you in the time that it takes to do it. But yeah, knock yourselves out. You can leave this for 2 days and come back to it and it would be amazing. Yeah, so I'm just going to put a lid on that. There we go. And the next thing we're going to get going is an absolute classic of African food in general. Most African or sub-Saharan African countries have a version of this, and it's a stodgy cake made from flour mixed with water. You get different versions depending on different types of flour that you use, and in different countries they do it differently. Even in Kenya I've seen several different versions of it. We call it ugali It has lots of different names in different places. Some countries use cassava flour or sorghum and all kinds of different flours. In Kenya we use maize flour. You can find this in most African, Caribbean, Asian shops in this country. This is the products that I use, the brand that I use, Iwisa. And yeah, because you deserve better, apparently. And it's always done the trick for me. I got this from the African Caribbean shop on Mansfield Road. I think that's literally what it's called, African Caribbean shop or store on Mansfield Road in central Nottingham, not far from the Victoria Centre. And they've got all of the spices and all of the African products that you need if you want to cook African food. And that's West or East or Southern African. This is really, it seems really simple. It's just a flour mixed with water to create a stodgy, firm cake, but a savoury cake, I should say. But there is a trick to it, and it does take a little bit of work, a bit of elbow grease. What I'm going to do is put some water on the boil to start us off with, and then I'll crack on and show you one of the other dishes as we're doing it. But there is a knack to it, and it is another thing that my granny showed me, something that took quite a bit of practice to get right, and even now it's nowhere close to the way she makes it, obviously. So I'm going to give it my best shot, and I'm going to show it you. The first thing to do is put the water on, and then we're going to show you one of the other dishes while that's boiling. So I've about half filled a pot that big. I don't know if you can tell next to my hand how big that is. I mean, this stuff, it's really filling, really stodgy, quite Moorish as well. But yeah, just make as much of it as you want. You'll see how much flour to use for it as you go along, and as you stir it in, and it gets harder and harder, and you'll be able to tell. So I can't give you any exact measurements for that. Just fill up a pan of water and put it on the boil. Pop a lid on that to help it. And while that's boiling, we're gonna move on to making our sukuma wiki. As I said earlier, this is a dish using greens. I'm using spring cabbage, but you can use kale, which is really similar to the original sukuma, which is like collard greens in America that they often have in the southern states. It's a bit harder to find over here, but you might be able to get it in London or some of the bigger cities, Birmingham perhaps. I haven't found it in Nottingham, but cabbage and kale make great substitutes, and so I'm just going to chop this up. And typically in Kenya, as I said before, a lot of people eat meat. Nyama choma is barbecued meat. Often it's beef or goat. And sukuma wiki is one of the typical accompaniments to that. So you can go out every weekend in Nairobi or most cities in Kenya and find places that are doing amazing barbecue. I mean, I'm doing it all vegan, and I am actually being good and not eating meat at the moment, but I do enjoy it when I'm out there, I have to say. And yeah, barbecued meat, sukuma wiki, ugali, which we're in the process of making, and some kachumbari, which you've seen already, the salad, are classics really. We're changing it slightly and replacing the nyama choma today with that coconut bean stew, which is more of a coastal thing. And these dishes here, you do find them everywhere in Kenya, but the best ones that I've had have been in Nairobi, the capital, or out west where my family's from, Kisii. What I'm going to do is just put all of this here in this pan, just while I'm making some space to chop the rest. And this is a really, really easy dish to make. I'm going to chop the rest of that and I'll show you what I'm doing with it. It's literally just this cabbage, or the green of your choice, alongside some tomatoes that I've already prepared and chopped. And then we're going to add some curry powder to that. So as I said before, the Indian influence in East African cuisine is really big. Everywhere you go, you see signs of it. One of the biggest accompaniments to Kenyan food is chapati as well. It's slightly different in the style from the ones that you might be familiar with, the chapatis you might be familiar with in this country, or perhaps even in India. I haven't been to India and tried them there, but yeah, the ones in Kenya are quite doughy sometimes and oily, which I really like. And everywhere you go, from restaurants to houses where people welcome you there, chapati is made. Eating in the home is a big thing as well in Kenya. Like, everybody cooks for you when you go. It's an automatic thing, really. If you go to visit somebody, they'll make some food for you. They'll be in the kitchen preparing before you arrive, and when you get there, they'll have a feast. You'll probably eat, and then they'll say, "Come and visit our neighbours down the road." And you get there, and they prepared food for you. So you have to kind of put a limit on it sometimes of how many people you're going to visit in a day, because that will mean how many meals you have. I've put the cabbage in the pan there. I'm just going to put a little bit of water in it. Just put a little bit in it to help it cook. Let's turn that on. And we're going to add the tomatoes as well, straight off. Already chopped. These are larger tomatoes, not like the cherry ones I used for the Kachumbari earlier. So those ones are going straight in as well. And as it cooks, some of the juices of that are just going to go straight down into it. I'm going to put a lid on that as well. And let's have a little look at our stew. Let's get in there and check that out.
Steamy.
Oh, you can't smell this, but
it does smell amazing.
Yeah, really getting the cinnamon.
Coconut's there.
Yeah, the coconut and cinnamon. I think I'm probably going to add a bit of lime to this at the end as well. Lime in the coconut. Drink the bowl up. And that's good. I'm going to keep that on a lowish heat actually now. Probably move it over to this one. Great. So that is going to cook happily away. I'm going to move that to the high heat actually, that's a better idea. And our water's nearly boiled for the ugali. Yeah, if any of you get the opportunity to go to Kenya, it's obviously known for its beautiful scenery, but just the blend of cultures is something that I haven't seen in many countries. I mean, we're lucky in this country to have a very multicultural society, but Kenya does as well, and especially in the big cities. And in Nairobi, you've got a very big NGO community, for better or worse, and the United Nations have a big presence there as well. So you do get people coming into work from all over the world, and a lot of diplomats and embassy workers there as well. But you get construction workers as well from different parts of the world, a lot from China and Japan. And you're now seeing amazing Chinese restaurants springing up all over Nairobi. When I was there, last time I was there was 6 years ago, and I went out to eat in some amazing Chinese restaurants, and it wasn't like Chinese food I'd had anywhere else. I hadn't had it like that in this country. It was very, very different. I was with people who knew Chinese food from certain regions of China and said that it was as authentic as they remembered it being over there. So I think there's really loads to see there. The Indian restaurants, the Chinese restaurants, some really good Japanese food as well. And then obviously having people from all over the world, from North and South America, from Europe, they bring their influences as well, and their needs really for some of their own food, which then is taken on by the locals, adapted, blended, and that's always been the way with Kenyan cuisine. Going way back, the first colonizers, or the first people to try to colonize part of the country were the Omanis, the Arabs, who came down and did control a lot of the East African coast, including Zanzibar and Lamu Island in eastern Kenya. The Portuguese came along as well, and they fought for supremacy of that area with the Omanis. And it wasn't really until the British that there was a bit more of a kind of established colonial presence that actually went inland as well into Kenya. And what happened really with that was that a lot of the land that had been cultivated and used by tribes like the Kikuyu, as well as many others, was taken really and taken by the British, used for their own businesses, their own industries. They developed a huge agricultural industry, as I've said before. But that tradition of growing and that tradition of taking in new ideas and new influences never really left the people who were native to that land, the Kikuyu and the other tribes. I mentioned the Kikuyu especially because they're the biggest tribe in Kenya, but there are lots. I think there are over 50 tribes. My family's tribe, the Kisii, are from the west of Kenya, which is highlands, and it's beautiful. It's where a lot of the tea and the coffee comes from. And yeah, the people there are friendly, welcoming. They'll cook for you in your house. But they're hardworking as well, and they're used to working in the fields and picking tea all day, basically. Lots of traditions I could tell you about, but yeah, just get out there if you can. If you ever get the chance again with what's going on here, if we're ever allowed to get on a plane again, or hopefully there'll be other ways of doing it. Maybe by boat we can travel longer distances at some point. But yeah. I'd say to everyone, once in your life you have to visit Kenya. I'm going to have another look at this stew. It's cooking away nicely. And I'm going to turn that right down now. I'll take this off. Final thing we need to do now is cook this ugali. I'm going to move this to the front so it's a bit more visible for you. And the water's boiled now. So there is a technique to this. What you want to really avoid doing with this flour is just throwing it straight into the water. If you do that, if you just spoon it in or pour it in, it's going to immediately congeal and form into these clumps that are going to be then quite difficult to get out. You'll have very lumpy ugali. So what I'm going to do, something that my granny showed me, is I'm going to put it into a mug first. I'm going to take a little bit of the hot water that we've got. Using my spoon, I'm going to put a bit of the maize flour into that water and just start stirring immediately to stop it from forming those clumps, as I said. This is what it looks like now. It's starting to melt, but I'm continuing to mix it. And this is one of the key things with ugali, is that you have to really continue to stir it. The best thing really is just a wooden spoon. So what I'm going to do now is very gently, slowly introduce it to the rest of the boiling water and stir it as I'm doing. Just going to give that a bit of a stir. Take a little bit more out and do the same thing again. Now I'm really stirring with two hands because I want what's going on in the pan to keep moving, and I want the powder, the maize flour that I've put into this mug to keep moving as well. All about avoiding those lumps. And this is going in as well now. I mean, you can never really avoid the lumps completely. As you can see on the spoon, I've already got some there. You can't avoid it, but you can lessen it by doing this. And that's really just for the beginning bit. You need to kind of introduce it slowly like that. I mean, I don't really know the science behind it, but this is what Granny said, so it's gospel. You turn it a bit. She used to do it in a kind of figure of 8 kind of style, kind of motion. Again, you can probably do it any way you want, but I'm not going to deviate from the way she did it. And now that we've got some in there and we've got this kind of cloudy white mix going on in the water, now I'm feeling a bit better about just introducing a bit of it directly into it and stirring that as I go. You will get some clumps, but what you can do with that as well is just push the spoon up against the edges, kind of knead it in with the spoon. As you can see, that breaks up the lumps. And you just keep stirring. So we're not going to do all of it now. What we need to do is leave it for a bit. Now that we've got a nice kind of cloudy mix that's slightly thicker than that water but not too thick, we're going to leave it. I'm going to put the lid back on top and put it on a very low heat, and we're just going to let it simmer.
So let's just look at that consistency so people know.
Yeah. We are getting a few lumps, but that's fine. We're going to massage those out. You can see the spoon moves through it fairly easily, but it's not as thin as water. But not too thick. And that's going to be good to now be left with the lid, a tiny little bit of a gap in the lid to let the air out. And we're going to move it over to the low heat. Stew's fine. And let's check out the sukuma wiki again. So now you can see the tomato mixing in nicely, and that cabbage is starting to wilt and starting to soften up a bit. We've still got that water in the bottom there. And so what I'm going to do now is add that curry powder. I mean, you can use any kind of curry powder really for this. I'm just using a standard one, but yeah, get down to your local Indian shop.
I think that might be Raja's mild curry.
Just Raja's, okay. I was in mild. That's probably right for the girls then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't want to put them off too much. Yeah, we get a lot of our spices from Raja's or from Sharif and Sons in Nottingham in Highsingbury. But yeah, as long as you're in a reasonable sized city or town, you should be able to find some kind of shop that does the maize flour and all of these Indian spices, and maybe even also the sticks of cinnamon and the nutmeg if you wanted to start it from scratch. I've never actually used nutmeg from that stage. I only ever used powdered, but it's something that perhaps we could do in future. Yeah. So that's mixed in nicely. I'm going to put that back, that lid, turn it down a bit. And I'm going to leave a slight gap with the lid, and we're just going to reduce that water away so that in the end it's going to be slightly liquidy, but really not much liquid to it, and it's going to be the nice wilted soft cabbage with the flavours of the tomato and the curry in there as well. Our ugali, if you have a look, is starting to bubble now. Just going to give it another stir just to be on the safe side. Yeah, that's looking good. And I'm just going to clear a bit of this. While I'm doing so, just listen to this music a little bit. And really now what we're doing is just waiting. So I've got the ugali cooking, I've got the stew just boiling very, very slightly, and I've got the sukuma wiki doing its thing. Kachumbari, our other dish which we made earlier, is already finished. So really now we're very close to the end. We're just waiting for those three to really reach their end. And the ugali will take a bit more attention, but we'll move to that when it's ready. So yeah, check out the tunes. I'm just going to tidy up a little bit. What I'm just going to do now is have a little taste of this this bean coconut stew. Just see if we need to add a bit of salt and pepper, or maybe another bit of garlic perhaps.
Can we have a look in there?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
So the beans have started to colour it a bit more now.
Yeah, beans need a little bit more, so I'm going to put that on a bit. But I think you could do with a little bit of pepper. Where are we? And if I wasn't cooking for the kids, I would possibly put a little bit of chilli in there as well. Yeah, it's one of the things. Chili and lime you find in everything in Kenya. You get these amazing crisps, these cassava chips that you can just buy on the street. Kenyan street food's really good. Lots of little fried snacks, but these little crisps, these cassava chips that you buy, come in a little see-through bag, and you buy them from somebody on the street, and they squeeze in a bit of lime and they sprinkle some chili powder on the top, and it's, yeah, it knocks your socks off, but it's, yeah, one of the flavours of Kenya. So yeah, chili and lime in most things really. I'll put a bit of lime in that at the end, as I said, but I'll leave the chili out today just because the girls can't have chili in everything that we make. So Kumawiki's doing well, boiling away, trying to just reduce that water, remember. And the ugali is still bubbling. It's about ready now for the next step. So, what we're going to do now with the ugali is add a bit more of this powder and really thicken it up. This is something that you can do a lot easier with two people. My granny often used to get me to do the pouring while she stirred it in. And then as you add it, as you stir it, as it gets thicker, it really starts to take a lot more hard work, and it can tire you out pretty quickly. My granny's tough as nails, and she does this still, like wakes up at 4 or 5 in the morning every day and makes big stews of meat and makes her ugali. And yeah, she might be into her mid-80s, but she would probably beat me in an arm wrestle. So, years and years of stirring ugali has made her tough. I'm going to sprinkle it in. I'm going to do the sprinkling and the stirring. As I'm going, I'm finding little lumps sometimes and I'm pressing them up against the side of the pan with the spoon. And then stirring again. The important thing here is to keep it moving. You don't really want to be leaving it for more than a couple of seconds. It gets a lot flourier, and already I'm starting to feel that it's getting a bit tougher. Thanks. And I'm still squeezing the lumps off to the sides. It's not too bad actually, this one, it's looking pretty smooth. Throw it all in there now. The thing with this is, as well, is to not underestimate how stodgy it needs to be, how thick it needs to be. You might feel that it's not turning very easily, but you do have to do it quite a lot. A couple of times when I was learning to make this, I made that mistake and underestimated it and didn't make it hard enough, and then you get a bit more of a sloppy kind of mashed potato style thing at the end of it, which is not what it's meant to be. Already there you can see that it's starting to get really thick. It sticks to the spoon now. At all costs, avoid this getting on your skin. It sticks and it's boiling hot, and every Kenyan knows the pain of ugali on the skin, hot ugali on the skin.
And surprisingly, it does actually clean out of the pan quite well. I was quite worried the first time you made it because it looked like it was never going to leave. But it does come out all right with some soaking, doesn't it? I
think the key is though to get some water on the pan straight away when you get it out. Definitely helps to get it off easier. So that looks really thick, but it's still not thick enough.
Kids love ugali as well. Our kids love it, don't they?
Yeah, it's really Moorish. I think one of the other fun things for them that the kids really like, and what I really liked when I was a kid, was just the fun of eating with your hands as well, which is the way it's done in Kenya. Ugali is really fun to play with. It's like, you know, kids play with mashed potato. Well, in Kenya it's ugali, and you can form balls of it with your hands. You just grab a ball of it, try not to get it when it's too hot, and then make a little indentation with your thumb, and it kind of becomes a little spoon that you can scoop up the rest of your food with. When you eat out in Kenya, in traditional Kenyan restaurants, they'll bring around a bowl of soapy water, and you wash your hands at the table. You eat with your hands, and then at the end of it they bring around some more water again to clean your hands. That I'm pretty happy with now, the consistency of it. So what I'm going to do is turn off the heat, and I'm going to put it in a bowl. I'm going to put it all in this. Another spoon just to get everything off. I'm going to press it down so that it goes right down into the bowl and fits, it kind of molds into the shape of the bowl. We're going to leave this for a little while with a tea towel over the top of it, and it's going to cool a little bit, and then when it's ready, what we'll do is upturn it, turn it onto a plate, and it will have that, it'll set slightly, and it will have that form of the bowl upside down. Right, I'll put some water in that. taking a clean tea towel, just going to cover that up. Put that to one side. That's it, we're done with the ugali. And if we just have a little look, we're pretty much done with everything. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with all of that. So what I'm going to do now is just serve off a plate so you can see what it looks like. There's the sukuma wiki. A bit of that really flavoursome bean and coconut stew, that Swahili classic with those spices from the East Coast. Got that really refreshing salad that we made earlier, the Kachumbari, which has the onions, tomatoes, cucumber, chilli, paprika, and of course that lime juice that really gives it zest and a refreshing flavour. Gonna spoon some of that onto the plate as well.
Quick look at
Yeah,
that.
get in there. I'm going to show you the ugali probably sooner than you should. You should leave it to sit for a while to toughen up. I think I made it quite tough, so it should be okay. Ideally, you want to probably leave it in its bowl with that tea towel for about 15 minutes, 20 perhaps, and that will really set, that will really go hard. We don't have that much time, so what I'm going to do is just tip it up for you, show you what it looks like, and we'll slice a little bit off, and then I'll set the rest to one side for when we actually eat this. Yeah, it feels okay. And there we go, there's the ugali, famous ugali. And what we would do is cut a slice here, that feels a good consistency. Cut a little triangular slice like that. There you go, it's still pretty hot, so you wouldn't eat it straight away. But there you have it, 4 classic Kenyan dishes, easy to make. All the ingredients are on the comment section of the video for you. I hope you've enjoyed joining me for this this cook along and listening to the music. Thank you, Emma, for filming it so well throughout. I'm gonna go now and eat this. So, bye bye, kwaheri.
Bye.
Bye.